So tonight we have Open Web Device, and we have a couple of cool demos to start off with. We have Sandro and Zia from the AT&T Foundry working on a WebRTC project that embeds into Mozilla's browser. And we also have a couple of special announcements tonight. So I'd like to introduce Sandro from the AT&T Foundry, and he'll just talk a little bit about what they do in Palo Alto while Zia sets up.
Thanks. Hi guys. Zia and I work at the AT&T Foundry down in Palo Alto, and basically pretty new on the scene. We've only been around for about a year and a half, and what we do is we're a small group of designers, developers, and marketing folks, and it's a joint venture between AT&T and Ericsson. And what we do is we go out and leverage our big technology partners like Ericsson and match them together with talent and technology from Silicon Valley and small startups that we meet many times in places like this, and we put projects together for new proof of concepts and prototypes for future AT&T products, and we pitch them back into the business. And a lot of times they get picked up and they get taken to market with AT&T. We don't really make investments in startups. We invest in projects that will go to market with AT&T at scale, which is pretty huge for some of the companies we've helped out. The deal with Inticel that Cisco just bought Inticel for $470-some-odd million. It started at the Foundry. So we've made some good successes so far, and we hope to make some more. We're going to show tonight one of the big interests we have currently is on open web standards. The Firefox OS is a huge interest to us, bringing more communications capabilities into open web standard, and specifically mobile browsers is huge. So I'm going to introduce Zia Syed, who's a very close colleague of mine, who will walk you guys through the demo. So thank you.
Okay, so, two levels or?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so as Sandro said, we at the Foundry is like a startup in Bear River Valley. We really believe in the open standards, and we look at opening up the network. So when we started the Foundry, we kind of have a very blank slate in terms of what we think is a bigger opportunity, what we should do, and this is the stuff that I've been working for the last 1 year at the Foundry. And we're looking at exposing the core network assets to the developers, but exposing it in a way that is like, very quickly for you, you should not need to learn anything about calls or voice or codecs and everything. It should just drop in and it should work. So this is the website of the JavaScript that we announced this year. It's January at the AT&T Developer Summit. And it was kind of put together, kind of a revision of how we think the network as an API. They think about a network that running like 100 million subscribers, and we want to plug in and open it up for the developers. This is the simplicity we were looking into. The reason for us to demonstrate here, and I'll show it to you guys, is to kind of get a feedback from you guys, because we are continuously iterating, continuously changing the way we've been, doing things yesterday. So this JavaScript library is open for beta developers, and what it does is that if you look at it, these few lines of code, you can actually put it into any HTML file browser like Chrome or Firefox, and you can route AT&T calls into your browser. You can make calls from the browser, right? And that I think is really cool, because of this code, our goal was that our boss's 11-year-old son should be able to write code. He should be able to write code, making calls through the web browser, and I think he were able to do that. And so what I'm going to do with this one, to quickly just show you that what I really mean by simplicity of enabling calls into your web application is I go into a Salesforce website, right? This is a stock Salesforce application, CRM, and I've enabled the developer pane for that. What I'm going to do is that I'm basically going to copy and paste the source code that we saw on the web. And I just added a bunch of imports for CSS and stuff. All these is open source, so you guys can have a look at it. Basically, all it's doing is that, we are basing it on the jQuery events. And onReady basically goes and initiates an AT&T object. And gives an API key. Of course, for the demo, I just hard-coded it right now. You're probably going to have it tied into your Salesforce identity. And here I'm defining some of the functionality I want. So these are my callback functions. What do I want to do in the callbacks? I'm going to throw in a couple of console logs. And this is the phone that I'm going to initiate. And there's the phone functionality. There could be anything else. And you can have a list of, like, there's contacts you can get. You can get messages. You can get all these kind of functionality based on this simple interface. So with that, what I'm going to do is that copy and paste this code into your Salesforce website. And if my MiFi works, let's see. Oh, nice. So one of the key business value for us to do this is there's a great demand for tying call management into our existing business processes. So CRM is like the lowest hanging fruit of that. It's like, okay, how can we CRM enable this application? So I have lost my, yeah. So I go back here, this time when I save it, if you guys have played with the Salesforce UI, basically reloads it every time, and then right now what's doing is that it's log us into the AT&T's call management platform. So the use case we're after is that a sales engineer can I see the view of my phone? Oh, there it is. Or not. So the use case is that, so I'm a sales guy, and I have a phone number that my customers are used to for the last 5-10 years. And every time they call me on my phone, I have to pick up my phone. And then I have to log that call back into the website so that I can track, my bosses can track that I made up a sales call and this is what the action items and all that. And it's a real pain, you know, for them. It takes a lot of their time. So we said, okay, with just few lines of code, let's see if we can route this call into our browser. So now what should happen is that first, the call came into my browser, and if my network should work, my call should come into my cell phone. Okay, it's not coming. I don't have a coverage. Let me see. I have a coverage. Wasn't type again. Okay. Usually it's the WebRTC part that doesn't work. But anyway, so while this is coming again, I'm calling back. What should happen is, so there was no special software downloaded. It was a stock Chrome browser that you can download right now, just enable WebRTC. And then this application worked, right? And now I can answer the call on my, now I need to find my cursor. Right? So this is the same for the WebRTC permission. But again, imagine the user experience from the customer calling in. He's probably unaware that I answer the call on my browser, or I answer the call on my phone. But at this point, the call is here in the on my browser. I am getting all the events. If I want to change the layout, if I want to bring up the last ticket, if I want to do anything else, if I want to record a call, I want to tag it with this case or with the customer, I can easily do that. And that's like very quickly we wanted to just show you what does it mean by an API that you can use to bring the whole power of the network into your business processes. And kind of spark your imagination a little bit about it. And think about the network already has your identity. Network already has your location. Network already has your payment information, the billing. And what we're thinking about is that we're working with you guys, trying to figure out how we should expose those assets as an API or function. That you can just drop in a code like that, and it should just work. So this is why I would like to hear, feedback from you guys and kind of learn from it. Like, tell us, like, it works, it doesn't work, it's screwed up, totally fix it this way. It shouldn't be JavaScript, it should be something else. Tell us your feedback about that. So with that, I'll just conclude my first demo. Second is the one that I will get Jacob to come and help me a little bit. And while Jacob comes and set up this demo, so this is the work we did in January. And one thing that Sandra, I think, and I'll tell you that, we work in a very fast pace. We're like a startup, right? So we work in a maximum 12 weeks sprint, but most of my projects are always last like 8 weeks, because then we move into the next cycle. So what happened after in January, we did at CES, we got so much kick out of it. It's like, okay, then what's the next thing? We got to do Firefox, right? And then we heard with the Firefox team, like, okay, Ericsson is already working with Firefox, with Mozilla, on integrating some of the next generation voice communication platform. And we said, hey, AT&T should come in and also enable their APIs into that experience. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Mozilla social API, right? So in this project, what we did was we said AT&T has a bunch of APIs with like address book API, messaging API, Locker, our own Dropbox version with secure container and whatnot. And we said we have our own identity and with AT&T identity. And we said, what would it look like if we tie it with the persona, which is the Mozilla's version of browser ID? And say if we can start leveraging some open standard like persona, the browser ID, and tying it to leverage your AT&T identity and the services through that, how would that look like? So this is a very rough prototype we put together in literally 3 weeks before Mobile World Congress. We showed it at the Ericsson booth. And what Jacob is going to do is that going to run through quickly that demo. What does it look like? The flow. You can use this one. I will turn it on.
Okay, so do I switch over to that one?
So while he's setting it up quickly, on the right side you're seeing the login with persona. That's actually the social API bar. So that's the bar that stays up while you're browsing any other different websites. You could be on, let's say, just open another tab here. Like this is, you can be browsing it anywhere. It's like the way we think is like the Firefox on the top right, always the Google search box. It's always there no matter where you are. You just go, on the right side, you go and you search it. We're thinking that, the way we think it is, this is like your social bar. It's always there. Wherever you're browsing, you're doing anything, you want to leverage any other services, this is the place to go.
So here we have integrated AT&T's call system with Persona, Firefox. And so when I log in over here, we'll go to the AT&T system and check for my ID. And it'll ask to send me a text message. It'll send me a text message as my consent. Once I say yes, I'll have access to all the network APIs, the ones that I showed, and messaging, and Locker, and all those. And yeah, this is my text message.
So if you guys look, what's happening is that the persona did the authentication. That's Jacob Thomas, right? Now the second thing is to happen is that we need to get a consent from a user that we're going to be making, exposing these APIs on its behalf. So we're capturing the consent through the SMS. And from that, when he replies successfully, we should be able to give him access, give the persona application access to his services.
You forgot an A.
Yeah.
You got something that's a kid, you forgot an A.
Yeah, there's typo. See, these are the things we are learning that actually we need to make it easy because the auto caps function really sucks. And our server side guys, they want it to be secure. Like, no, we want to make it case sensitive. We're like, And 4-letter words are very dangerous. We should not do that.
So once you're logged in, you have access to the AT&T cloud contacts, you have Locker, and you can also send text messages. Right now, Zia is not online, so...
Yes, actually. So the address book you're looking at, basically, that is the AT&T's address book. You have an option on your phone to set up AT&T as your address book provider. And what that does is that every time you make any changes on your phone's native as an iPhone address book, it updates the same, the AT&T address book content. Address book.
I see Zia online.
Hang on a second, I'm not there yet. No, I need to go through that thing. So we can make these persist, but for the demo purposes, we are not making them persist. Every time we log in, we have to go through the consent flow right now. So I should be coming on live soon. Okay. So now and now what he's doing right now is setting up a peer-to-peer connection between my browser and his browser. And this is using WebRTC. So I just got an invite here on my laptop. Let's see if I can show you. Okay, that's my view. And for some reason, right? So the idea is that while I'm talking to Jacob, I could be on any website. And this is a place that I can always keep my window open. Now, of course, we're going to have multi-party chat here. We're going to have drag and drop of my URL over there, so he can just see the page that I'm looking at. Or if I have some content on my desktop, I can just drop it into the same section that I have going on. So right now we have a peer-to-peer media section, but also a data section as well. So we can use that for any other functionality. So the key point was that these APIs, when we open up the network, very quickly we can put together these experiences for you guys. So you can go and build some new sort of experiences. So for example, when Jacob came from here, when he's going to make a phone call, the receiving party is going to get Jacob Thomas' phone number that they've known for the last 10 years. It's not a new Google Voice kind of virtual number that he has to get. And I think that's really powerful because at the end it's all about the identity and how we tie an identity in different places. With Mozilla, you can think about, like, in your Firefox OS, you log in with your ID over there, all the services, the applications are running on your Firefox OS. In your browser, you can actually start experiencing the same content in the same source. So these are quickly two demos we wanted to demonstrate and kind of, put in front of you guys and get a feedback from you at your time.
Cool. Give us a hand. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
So we have a quick presentation about an accelerator program that we announced last week at Mobile World Congress, and Artie is my partner in crime on this. So I'll let him go through the different slides and talk about the program.
Thanks, Mario. So my name's Artie Merritt. I think I know a decent amount of you folks. Mario and I kicked off this idea at Mobile World Congress just a couple weeks ago. So the team behind it, Mario, myself, Mike Rao, we actually have a pretty impressive team of mentors too, which if you go to the site, you can start to see some of them coming in. But at a high level, what we are is it's a accelerator program similar to a 500 startups or Y Combinator, but for mobile-specific startups. So most of you, if you've been coming to Mobile Monday events, you know about Mobile Monday. We're in over 100 different cities in more than 50 countries. It's a nonprofit and it's a leading mobile community. So we took a look at different accelerators that were out there, and there's a lot that are broad, like as mentioned, the 500 startups, Y Combinator. We're starting to see trends around vertically focused ones. So you see Media Campus, a media-related one. He had us in his games, pies, advertising. And what we saw is there's a missing spot for a mobile-specific one that's also a nonprofit. And that's what we came up with, Momentum. So the program, it's a 12-week program here in San Francisco. It consists of workshops, corporate sponsored days, so we'll talk about some of the sponsors in a second, but we have people like PayPal and Samsung, as well as social events like weekly dinners or some sort of activity where we can just help with the networking. The workshop classes that we're hosting, they cover topics like monetization, how to sell your product into enterprises, legal issues, things around mobile development. This is a sample of some of the workshops that we're putting together. For startups, the benefit of a program like this is it really helps you, our goal really is to help you commercialize your product. So we're looking for startups that already have shipping products, some amount of funding, and what we're going to try to do is help develop relationships with the different sponsors, with the mentors, with other people in the mobile community to help you really operationalize your company. So hopefully you end up landing some commercial deals out of this. We're also putting in front of VCs, so if you are looking for funding, that's one opportunity there. You get global exposure and access to some pretty impressive brands. The whole event is, the whole program is being hosted at RocketSpace, which if any of you guys aren't familiar with RocketSpace, it's probably the leading shared office space here in San Francisco. Tons of impressive startups have come through there. They have, almost every week they have some sort of event going on. It's just a great community to be part of. So as I mentioned, the target applicants are really looking for companies that have some product already. This isn't just two guys with an idea yet. That's something shipping because we're trying to operationalize that. And some amount of funding. So consider it somewhat of a graduate program. And we look at the teams, so we look at the companies based on the team, the product, market viability, how does it fit with the sponsors, what traction have you had to date. Applying is really easy. Just go to momentum.mobilemonday.us/apply. And we're making use of F6S, so if you have a LinkedIn or a Facebook account, you just log in. It's pretty easy. The application only has about 5 questions. If anyone out there is interested in sponsoring, so if you're, as I mentioned, if you're familiar with Mobile Monday, since we're in over 100 cities, 50 different countries, this is great global exposure, opportunity for global exposure, and you get unparalleled access to these startups at such an early stage. So it helps reinforce your brand as being innovative. You get to spur innovation in the mobile space, early access to the startups to help shape the roadmap of the startups, perhaps invest at an early stage, maybe even acquire at an early stage. So some of the partners we're looking at, it's some of the usual suspects like handset manufacturers, OS providers, big brands. And if you're interested, the sponsorship just starts at $25,000, and in addition to getting all that access, you can help shape the program itself. You can be mentors in the program. You can teach one of the workshops or help us define different aspects of the program. So the partners we have today: Samsung Developer, the Samsung Developers Group, Belty, Intuit, PayPal, and as I mentioned, it's all hosted at RocketSpace. And we're looking for more sponsors and partners if you're interested. And then on the angel side, since we are a nonprofit, we can't give the funding directly, so what we're doing is lining up these VC pitch days with a whole slew of top-notch VCs out here. So we have Shasta Ventures, looks like the SV Angel, which is Ron Conway's group, and a couple others that are lined up to participate in a VC pitch day. And if you are an investor out there, similar benefits. It helps with deal flow. These are pre-vetted startups, save a lot of time for you. And we kick this off at MWC. Applications are open now, so if you're a startup out there and you want to apply, go to momentum.mobilemonday.us and apply. We're going to evaluate so applications close basically the end of this month. We'll evaluate them all in April, and the plan is to start in May. So if you have any questions, just find Mario or myself around here, or send us an email. I'm happy to help.
Thanks, Artie. All right, next we have Wayne, Telefonica. And Wayne's going to give us an overview on open web device, followed by a demo with Mozilla.
There it is. It's a duet.
All right.
It's a duet. Sort of.
You want the funnier one? The islands in the street.
Sun forward, right?
Always forward.
All right.
Great. Well, I'm Wayne Thorsen. I'm the Vice President of Global Partnerships for Telefonica. And for those of you who don't know who Telefonica is, since here in the US we don't have any major operations. It's a large international telecom company with operations in 25 different countries, generally large mobile operations, and we have about 330 million subscribers, so we're quite large, but just in other places, mostly Europe and Latin America. About a year ago, we started an organization called Telefonica Digital, which the point of Telefonica Digital was to take Telefonica beyond connectivity. And then within Telefonica Digital, I run the partnerships team, and the purpose of the partnerships team is to either work with partners like Mozilla in this case, and help develop new products and new strategies and things to help us take us there, or to help distribute other people's innovation.
All right, thank you. My name is Andreas Gall. I'm the VP Engineering for Mobile for Mozilla. And for those of you who don't know Mozilla, and I hope there's not many of you, I'll keep it very brief, but I want to talk a little bit about what Mozilla is and where we're coming from, which I think is really important to understand why we're doing this project and what our interest in this project is. So Mozilla was born out of the ashes of Netscape, which back then was trying to compete against Microsoft making proprietary browsers. So back then, development was proprietary, owned by Microsoft. They were deciding what technologies go into the web, and they had around 98% market share. And what Mozilla did over the last 10 plus years is basically redefine what we know today as the open web. It's governed by open standards and by many implementations competing for market share. And the way we did that is not by advocating. So we didn't like 1 years ago, like started giving talks about how the web should be open or how open technology should be used. Instead, we went and built a product that was really good and competitive, and people choose that product. And so that path, we basically eliminated more or less proprietary technology from the web. So this is pretty important, and keep this in mind as we go through the rest of the slides. So what is Firefox OS? So I gave a little bit of an overview of the history. What we did on the desktop is basically take proprietary technology and build something better, open, based on standards. And with that, we basically eliminated proprietary technology on desktop more or less. Today, if you have a browser, really the operating system built with proprietary technology by something like Microsoft is really just a bootloader that starts in the browser, and most of your online life, you live in the browser. So with Firefox OS, we're doing something very similar, because we are facing there a very similar world than we did 10 years ago on the desktop. That you have this locked-in proprietary platforms, whether it's iOS or Android, that are controlled from a technology perspective by a single vendor. And this is exactly what we're trying to change right now. So what we're basically doing is create a new smartphone completely based on the web, based on open standards. And again, as we did more than 10 years ago on the desktop, we're not really advocating for you to use this. We're basically building a very competitive product that users will want to choose over existing proprietary alternatives. And the end goal really is to take this and remove proprietary technology from the mobile space the same way as we did on desktop.
So why is this important? So there's three vendor constituents that make up the mobile ecosystem. There's absolutely a lot, these ends up being the three pillars. And so if you're an operator, why is this important to you? If you're an operator right now, from the high end, from the upstream, you're getting crushed by two different duopolies. There's the Android duopoly and the iOS duopoly, which ultimately is, and in addition to that, there's of course the Apple and then the Samsung from the device duopoly. Ultimately, these duopolies make it tough for you to do business, and then ultimately affect the level of innovation that you're able to offer your customers. So it's incredibly important for operators to have a broad and varied ecosystem where the competition sparks fantastic innovations for users and allows them to do new businesses. From an OEM point of view, it's even more important. Right now, we're entering an age where a lot of OEMs, they're competing based on the radius, the curve of the corner of the phone. It's getting really hard to make a truly differentiated experience. It's getting very tough. And so they're looking for anything where they can really make, soup to nuts, their own experience and their own voice to the consumer, and then to the content providers. This is incredibly critical. For those, and there is a division here which may not be visible to many people who are outside this industry. So for large content providers who grew up on the web, this is incredibly important. Because what ended up happening now is mobile became this distribution system for their innovation, their experience, and the way they interact with users. But now there's someone else in their marriage. There's someone else in their room with their partner. And this person, this app store now is deciding what is their experience with the consumer, what is their product roadmap, what is the innovation that they're able to offer. And for a lot of those partners, that's probably not a long-term sustainable thing if they actually want to grow their businesses and which the way they want to grow their businesses.
All right, thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about the OS itself, and we'll keep this very short. You're going to see a demo of this in a couple of minutes by Gregor, who's one of the engineers working here in San Francisco with us. But I want to specifically talk a little bit about the app ecosystem, which is really at the core of every smartphone. What sets apart a smartphone from a feature phone is that you do expect a rich ecosystem of applications that you can customize with it and lots of interesting content on it. And this has been traditionally really the area where new incoming smartphone OS is meant to die. You can look at the history of all the different attempts of trying to build a new smartphone OS. It usually didn't work, and it usually didn't work exactly for the reason that there was no ecosystem. Just to kind of like understand how daunting this challenge is to build a new ecosystem is, if you can observe some of the largest players like Microsoft be struggling to build a new ecosystem from scratch because the existing ones are so large. There's 100,000 or so apps in these app stores of iOS and Android. So there's really no way how you can take another proprietary system and bootstrap it and get it to the same size. I think at this point, app developers have decided that it's bad enough that you have to build for these two separate systems, iOS and Android, and then the third one they're building for is the web, and there's simply no room anymore to take no additional proprietary platforms. And that's where they're remarkably different. So we're not coming here to you today to tell you that in addition to the iOS and Android world, now you have to build for the Mozilla world as well. So what we're doing instead is we're taking the web as it exists today, and that's our app ecosystem. So this is not a Mozilla phone really, this is an HTML5 phone based on open standards. And we're not asking you to make applications for the Mozilla phone, we're asking you to make mobile HTML5 applications. And this is why really this project will be successful, is that you don't have to go and bootstrap a new app ecosystem. The ecosystem already exists, it's the mobile web as we know it today.
And so why is this partnership? So first of all, I think the first thing to say is this isn't a Mozilla Telefonica partnership. This is a web-wide partnership. And I think you saw just a few slides ago all the different operators who are getting behind this, and some of them, like Deutsche and a lot of others, have already announced markets they're going to be launching. And so it may have started off as kind of a small party, but now it's rolling. It's called the cops yet, but we're going to keep going until they do. And the point of this is why Mozilla? Why is Mozilla the right partner for us to work with on this? Who attacks the technology duopoly like you have now? I mean, it's overwhelming. But it's really only been done truly successfully one time before, without in the same marketplace using the same product, and that's this team. It's Mozilla. They did this 10 years ago. This is the team that did that. And when you think about, as an OS, for all the other constituents who are on that page, whether it's the operators, whether it's the OEMs, whether it's the content partners, who do they want to partner with? They want to partner with someone who, number one, gets it. Like they have a lot of respect for the development community. Also, they're not going to have business model conflict with it some unknown period down the road. That's incredibly important, and I think that a lot of say OEMs, as an example, now found themselves in somewhat strategic cul-de-sac by looking at certain OSs, and now all of a sudden they may be competing with the person for which they depend upon for supper. And so that's incredibly important. And then also building an app store in that ecosystem, they've already done it. They have it. They get it. And that's incredibly tough to do. And why is Telefonica here? Well, it's really hard for OEMs to build a phone on an OS that doesn't have any adoption. It's really tough. And it's really tough for content providers to build something that has an install base of 7. It's really a tough conversation to have. It's tough. And so what you need is an operator, a large global operator, somebody who can really represent a lot of different markets to break that, the really bad game theory logjam that happens there. Because as an operator, it doesn't make a lot of sense early on to do this. Because if you're going to do it, you can't do it for yourself. You can't do it as a point of strategic differentiation. You have to do this and make sure that every other operator is invited. In fact, if every other operator has at least the same rights and obligations that you do, which is, for me as a partnerships guy, it's tough. I use some different muscles I didn't normally have. And so we had to really go out there to do this. And so by guaranteeing launch in a lot of different countries, by guaranteeing this is going to be big, then the right OEMs can get involved. When the right OEMs get involved, then we go out together with Mozilla and we go get the right content partners. And now we have an ecosystem.
So before we close this out and show you a couple demos, I want to talk a little bit about the segment we're targeting initially. And this gets often confused wrong in the press, and I want to make sure that they explain a little bit the rationale, what we're doing right now for the first launch, and where we're seeing things go from there. If you look at the commercial phone market right now, you can easily see at the very, very high end of the segment is the iPhone. That's why the iconic iPhone is, everyone would like to have one of those. Unfortunately, not everyone can afford one of those, especially if you live in a developing world where the next 2 billion or so people will connect to the web, and most of them will do through a mobile device. So for most parts of the world, that's a very desirable device, but it's not really an obtainable device. And unfortunately, if you look at the rest of the mobile segment, pretty much everything else is aiming at that iPhone. And everyone is trying to make the iPhone killer. So Google is making more and more high-end versions of Android that are more and more resource hungry, but also very nice and shiny, and they all try to hit that very high-end price point. And unfortunately, OEMs have also fallen victim to this game. So if you go to World Congress, basically everything is about like more cores and bigger screen and more high-end phone, because that's what the margins are. So if you are in that part of the game, it makes sense to really aim at the high end, but unfortunately what you neglect is really the entire bottom part of the segment. The reason it's interesting for us is there's a couple of reasons. First of all, as I said, a lot of people will connect to the web over the next couple of years, around 2 billion or so over the next 4 or 5 years, and almost all of them will connect these devices in this bottom price segment. Because if you're somewhere in Brazil or somewhere in the developing world, you cannot afford those high-end smartphones. So simply there's a huge opportunity. There's a lot of people who right now have flip phones, these old feature phones. They're looking to upgrade for a smartphone. So simply this is a big business opportunity. At the same time, although it's the opportunity for Mozilla to impact the most amount of people. If you were to try to make an iPhone killer phone in the US, there's a certain amount of people who might choose that over an iPhone if you build it really well. But in the end, if you compare the volume of like selling like high-end phone in the US that you can obtain, it's like the volume of phones you can obtain in America or in Asia, it's going to be a very different game. So basically, this is where we plan on entering the market. You saw our press releases on World Congress time. And there's something like 16 operator partners, 6 of which have announced complete launches this year. And basically, all of them are launching right on the first series of the phone. And this summer, that's around this price segment here. A very affordable entry-level smartphone that covers all the basic things you expect from a smartphone based on a web-based experience. And then going forward, as we do the next second and third launch towards the end of the year and then early next year, we have had a bunch of OEM partners. They're also likely to make more high-end phones. So over time, we would like to cover the high-end as well. And there's no reason why the web cannot build a very high-end, iconic smartphone. But we simply don't see that as the entry opportunity for us. That we see very much in the developing world at a much more affordable price point.
That actually starts to cover some of our build. There we go. So here's our launch plans early on. So this is what we announced just a few weeks ago. To Andre's point, this is the market that is crying out for the right phone. The smartphone penetration rate in a country like Brazil is doubling every year. It's a huge market, and so as a developer, and a lot of you are, if you want to get into the 6th largest economy, this is a fantastic way to do it. This is a fantastic way to get attention. It's a great marketplace, and this is going to get a lot of market support from us. Vivo, in that case, is our brand. We operate in Brazil, and we're by a large measure the largest operator down there. So Spain, where we're also quite large, and Colombia, Venezuela as well. So these are the countries that we're going to launch in a few months. But during the year, we're also going to launch in many other countries in Europe and in Latin America. The key point here is it's not just us. As your honor said, there is a dozen operators out there, more than a dozen, who've committed, and many of them have already specified which countries they're going to launch in, and they're specified which devices they're going to launch with, and they're getting after it. So this is a fantastic opportunity to be part of this. So I think the next thing we're going to do is, Andres, you're going to give a quick discussion of the architecture, and then we're going to go right to the demo.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to bore you too much with the details. Mostly what I wanted to point out with this slide is that for those of you who know a little bit about Mozilla's size and background, we are not really large enough to ever build a system like this on our own. So as we built the Mozilla Firefox product in the last 10 years, we built it with a lot of partners, contributors to our open source project. So the Mozilla Foundation and Corporation that make up the core of Mozilla a couple hundred people, I think something like 800 people or so. But a larger communities, thousands of people, thousands of developers who contribute to the code. And something very similar happening is Firefox OS. So today already, we have multiple operators, multiple chipset vendors, multiple OEMs, so all contributing engineers and code in this project. And you can see the kind of different parts of the entire system. At the top level sits a rendering engine. So we're using the same rendering engine that we are also using in our Firefox browser. It implements the same web functionalities. On top of that sits the actual user experience. So everything that Greg was about to demo you in a second here, everything you can see on the screen is running with HTML5 and CSS and JavaScript. But the very bottom part of the system, and this is also often misunderstood, we basically use a couple open source pieces, such as the Windows kernel, that is also used by Linux. And we're doing that because this makes it actually very easy for OEMs to reuse device drivers that they have created for Android. But we're not doing any form or shape based on Android. So Android apps are one of these things. This is based on the web, not on Android technology. And all we do is just kind of share the low-level device drivers. Obviously, Android phones as well, which makes it very affordable and easy for OEMs to build Firefox OS phones. All right, Gregor. Gregor's going to demo a little bit the phone and what it looks like.
Yep. That's cool.
My name is Gregor Wagner. I'm a developer of Firefox OS based here in San Francisco. I'm with Mozilla now. And I want to show you the amazing progress that we made in the last 18 months when we started out with an empty GitHub repository. Now it's becoming real. It's real phone. So this is the CTE device that Telefonica is going to ship in Latin America in the next few months. So it's an entry smartphone. Okay. So in other words, this is Firefox OS. When you start it up, it shows you the lock screen. When you unlock it, it shows you the home screen. So all you see here is based on open web technologies with HTML5 and JavaScript. No native code involved whatsoever. If you want to implement a new application for this phone, you don't have to learn a new language. And you just, if you know how to write a web page, you can write an application for this phone. So all the applications you see here on the bottom are the basic applications that you expect of a smartphone. The dial application, for example, you want to call your friends. So these are applications that you install on your device, where you don't have to be connected. Info, it's the web, these are installed. And even if you don't have data connection, they work. So it comes with your dialer, you can send SMS, your contacts application. So this shows you the integration of the social aspect of Firefox OS. So it shows you that you can import your Facebook contacts. For example, let's pick one example. So here you can download them, you can synchronize your contacts, and then you can call this person right away. You can write to the wall, you can send them a message, but it's deeply integrated in your contacts application. But it's the web, so if you don't like the contacts application, so it's up to you, you can write another one, right? You're not limiting this. It comes, of course, with the best web browser out there. It comes with Firefox. And depending on the speed of data, it shows the web page. So if you swipe to the right, it shows you all applications that are currently installed on this device. Some of them come with the device, some of them are downloaded from the Firefox Marketplace. And that's, so it comes to, for example, with the calendar application, email application, you can take pictures with the camera applications. So all of these are basically HTML5 and JavaScript applications that use special APIs that are implemented in the backend. That's basically running the browser, and all you see here is a web page. Let's see here maps that was implemented in Nokia. You can see info. This is a low-end device with 256 megabytes, but it's still pretty performant, right? You can zoom in, zoom out. And for Maps application, it works. Another example is, take a look at the music application. So you can listen to your music that you downloaded on your SD card, for example, and it's the web, and you can even go back, write messages, and you can listen to the music that runs in the background. So here you can see all the applications that are currently running. So if you want to get new applications for developers, how to provide application for this phone, it comes with the Mozilla marketplace. We're not limiting it to our marketplace. Carriers can put their own marketplace on this phone. Developers don't even have to use a marketplace. It's the web. So you make a web application, put it in your own web page, and people can download it and install the applications. And for payment, we do it a little bit different than you use from iPhone or Android. So we do carrier billing. It shows up on your phone bill, and we don't take people's credit card. So the billing is also just an API that's provided by the backend, and you don't have to worry about this. So here you see the basic applications that are currently on our marketplace. The categories, you can do games, for example, and then you can download the application and install them. So here you see applications that are currently installed. You can launch them right away or install new ones. So a second way to get new applications is dynamic app search, and that's really new with this device. And removes the border between what's a web application, what's a website. It's the web, so it's always it's the same. So if you swipe to the left from your home screen, you go to this dynamic app search. And this is based on your current location, so that's how we kind of support local developers that want to promote their own applications. So let's try it out. Let's try Sky for the movie. Now your home screen becomes a marketplace for movies. So you're not limited to one marketplace. It shows you all the applications that you can find in the internet that are related to movies. So you get Flixster, you get the movie database, you can watch, trailers on YouTube, for example. But let's go to Wikipedia. So now it's going to Wikipedia. It downloads the mobile version of Wikipedia. It does not install it. It's just loading the content. They can look at the content of Wikipedia, of the movie Skyfall, and if you don't like it, it's not installed. If you go back, it's not installed. So this solves the problem. You have multiple apps on your phone that you only use once, and you cannot get rid of them. You have to update them all the time. So here, if you like it, then you can even long press on it, and you can add it to your home screen. It's more like a bookmark where you can install it. So one example that I want to show at the end is the timeout application. So there we actually use offline storage. So for Wikipedia, it doesn't make sense to install Wikipedia because you still have to be connected to get the content of Wikipedia. But a timeout application, if you're not familiar with it, it saves information about the current location, about restaurants and telephone numbers. And here, I decided, okay, in Barcelona, I want to go there, and here it asks you, do you want to download the content of Barcelona? You're in the hotel, you have the Wi-Fi, or you're at home, and then you can download it to use it for offline mode. And if you like it, you can download it, and then you walk around in the city, and then you can use all this information that's downloaded in offline mode as well. And this is all basic HTML5 JavaScript, no native code involved whatsoever. And that's my demo. Thank you very much.
Hey, who left their sunglasses? Who are these wings?
Sandra's.
Oh, Sandra's too cool. That's it. So I'd like to introduce Jay Goldberg, who will be moderating the panel tonight on open web devices. And I guess we can call up the panelists as well. Cool. And so introducing Jay, give him a big hand.
Come on up. Hi, I'm Jonathan Goldberg. I'm a financial analyst, sometimes model, sometimes actor.
I think you were supposed to stand.
I'll stand. I'll stand.
Sorry, should we get
Here, we can use that. Maybe the answer right there. Yeah. They probably just get another chair.
Is that working? All right. Hi, I'm Jonathan Goldberg. I'm a financial analyst. Used to be with Deutsche Bank. Some of you may know me. I wrote Signals to Noise newsletter. Some later people like a mailing list. We're going to talk about open handset devices today. I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves. Take 30 seconds. Give us your name, your title. Go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Yasin. I'm an innovation lead at the AT&T Foundry, and I'm a technologist, full stack technologist. I work with different organizations in AT&T and Ericsson to bring in new concepts into the larger organization to kind of speed up the road to productization for any new technology.
I'm Wayne Thorsen. I run the global partnerships team for Telefonica, and we work with all of our global and strategic partners across the globe.
Andreas Gall, VP Mobile Engineering from Mozilla, and I've been involved in this project since day one from the Mozilla side.
Hey, I'm Steve Gill. I work here at Adobe. I'm a part of the PhoneGap project, PhoneGap Cordova. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. But we allow developers to make mobile applications using HTML, JavaScript, and CSS.
Hello, my name is John Lin. I'm a principal product manager at ZTE, and I'm part of the US-based strategic partnerships team and help facilitate better communications here in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, with our key partners such as Mozilla.
Okay, let me just ask the audience so we get a sense of who we're talking to. Show of hands, who has iPhone? Okay, show of hands, who has Android? Okay, little Android light, that's still decent. Who has BlackBerry? Wow, okay. Who has a Windows Phone? Lower your hand if you work for Nokia or Microsoft. All right. Let me just get a sense here. How many? Who has more than 4 MAC addresses on them at this moment? MAC addresses? Anybody? All right. I think I'm 3 because I have my 5. Okay. And how many of you are from developers writing apps? And how many of you work for companies that are less than 16 years old? That's the power of American capitalism right there. Okay, so we're going to talk about Firefox OS and open handsets. I'll throw out some questions. Don't feel about the answer. You don't all have to take turns. Let me start with sort of the obvious one. We've seen Manuel Moldman, Migo, Tizen, whatever they're calling it now. Clearly, you guys have a lot more built and working. What's going to give Firefox OS a better shot at success?
I think I talked about that briefly during the intro session, is that if you look at all these previous approaches, some of them were actually really great products, and I actually used some of them. Really where they all fell down is that they were trying to bootstrap a new ecosystem from scratch, and I think we have proven that that's simply impossible. And we're not doing that this time around. We are basically saying that there's the web, and it works for mobile as well. That's our app ecosystem. It's certainly not done yet. The mobile web is in some cases not as powerful in comparison to the device capabilities as the desktop web. And there's still some work to be done, but in general it already exists. There's millions of web pages out there. There's millions of developers out there, and many of them are sitting here today. So we don't have the problem of having to bootstrap the developer ecosystem and app ecosystem that's already there, and that's, I think, what's going to succeed.
Okay, so let me.
If I could just add to that, because I think it's almost the most critical why do we care question, right? And so I think this is different this time, and I know that's always a painful phrase to say, but actually, because it is an ecosystem, it's a translation of the current, as Andres is saying. That's number one, and then number two, there's a market moment that's happening now that wasn't happening a couple of years ago, because there is a compression of power for against other ecosystem participants. And so if you are an OEM, it's really tough out there. It's really tough out there. And if you're an operator, you can see what's happening, up the value chain. You're like, that doesn't look like a lot of fun. I hate it when it's going to hit me. And so there's a chance to actually do something about it. And these guys have built it because, once again, I think what Andres is saying is incredibly important. It's the translation of a current ecosystem is already there. And then ultimately, this is going to be complete irony coming from an operator I know, open always wins.
I'll come back to that. I just want to make sure Mozilla, no plans to open a fiber network, no plans to deploy municipal Wi-Fi anywhere.
Not in the short term.
Okay, good. So OEM, John.
Yeah, well, also, I think Mozilla is also selling itself a little bit short in terms of Firefox is already a built-in brand, and people love the Firefox browser. And I think that brand awareness will help, And also, because it is a truly neutral player, it is a nonprofit, OEMs like ourselves, aren't necessarily, there's no conflict, as I think Wayne had kind of alluded before. So I think a combination of factors make the Firefox OS effort, I think a little bit different. And I've been with the project since the beginning as well, and from the initial conversations when we were first introduced to Mozilla, and it really is amazing how much progress we've made. Even the demo right now that I saw tonight, it's like, wow, they must have done a little bit more optimization, because it's like, it looks really, really speedy, just even from like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So it's exciting to see.
Okay, so then I want to ask you a developer question. All right, so we talked about we talked about how this is built in, not necessarily developer ecosystem, but even broader designer ecosystem already out there ready to go. What's your impression? What's the sort of PhoneGap's constituency impression?
It falls right into the PhoneGap's objectives. We've always been big pushers of having open web, following web standards. We love platforms like WebOS. We wish they did better, but for whatever reasons they failed. And we've always wanted to open up this ecosystem to web developers. We wanted to allow web developers to make apps, get it in the app stores, have the ability to distribute, just like people who are making native apps do. And we want to see the web succeed. And seeing a project like Firefox OS, it's fantastic. We're already working on our port for it, and developers out there are already getting used to developing for mobile, and they can take those existing skills they already have and will easily be able to make Firefox OS apps.
All right, so then let me ask this. One of the pushbacks I hear a lot, this goes back to WebOS days before, developers are concerned that there is a performance penalty associated with writing a web app. Yeah, I'd like to hear both of your takes on what does it exist? What is Mozilla done to close that? And what are developers actually seeing?
It does exist to an extent. Web development isn't for everything. Like right now, if somebody goes, I want to develop a super high-performing game using web tech, I would have to tell them I don't think it's there yet. Like WebGL is still out there, and there's still lots of work to be done, but web tech isn't for everything. But for your basic needs, web tech is already there. It's already getting ready, and things like Firefox OS are just going to push it forward and make it more performant. Of course, we have a bridge that we use to go from web code to native code in certain instances for calling APIs. With Firefox OS, that latency should be gone because there are APIs in the web.
The web is also very specifically different from existing platforms in that there is a lot of incentives for web platforms such as our own Mozilla platform to improve, because we are competing in an environment where there's multiple implementation. There's Google's web engine implementation, there's ours, Opera used to have one until recently, there's Microsoft, there's Apple, and we are all competing over the same standards. And the only thing we have to compete is like features and also performance. So there's a lot of competition on like who builds the fastest engine, and that has actually advanced the performance of the web, especially on mobile, dramatically. Whereas if you compare something with Android, there's one implementation of it with Google, and they don't compete with anyone except themselves. So they have much less incentive to make their virtual machine faster, for example. So their VM has gotten a little bit faster. JavaScript over the last couple of years has gotten 20, 30 times faster, because there's this vicious competition around it. And also, this is not really a theoretical discussion anymore. If you look into the Android store, for example, you will find a lot of applications written in frameworks such as PhoneGap. So we're not talking about the theory of writing apps in HTML5. It's already happening today heavily.
I agree with that. I think sort of unspoken secret that 70% of apps out there are really sort of fancy bookmarks. But I'm really interested, because my impression is that you get pretty, when it comes to gaming on Firefox OS, we're already pretty close. It is something that, I want us to put a time frame on it, but within some reasonable developer time frame, we'll be able to actually run pretty good games on Firefox OS just using common JavaScript and common web tools to build a game.
I think I definitely agree with you that we're not exactly there yet. There's a lot of new technologies like GL coming up. We've actually demoed a couple of games at Mobile Congress. We have some additional demos coming out over the next couple of months that will show the potential of the platform. It's certainly not there yet for every use case. And the really high-end gaming experience for 3D, that might be for a year or two still on the native side more superior. But I think with WebGL you can already see where the platform is headed.
And you're already starting to see some polyfills for WebGL, and there's a bunch of libraries out there that are also doing a really good job, like Unity, Impact, Pender. There's a bunch of them out there. You can look it up and see what's out there.
So we're getting close. My impression. I don't know how much time we actually have, but so I'll just keep this moving. I want to talk about devices. You segmented the market a few minutes ago. Low-end smartphone, whatever, entry-level smartphone. We're already in a world today where you can get a pretty decent $50 Android handset. How does Telefonica, how does Mozilla fit into that universe? How far down does Android? It's called a path. Path implies direction, but let's just call it a path. How far are we?
Well, I think, and let me know if this doesn't answer your question, because I think there's a slightly different answer to that, and that's ultimately that you can't compete on price. And I don't think that this ultimately is about price. I think this is about iteration, which is why it's coming in this area, and it's also kind of about opportunity, because you're not competing, with mature smartphone users, right? For a lot of people, this is not only their first smartphone, and for a lot of people in the markets that are being addressed by this is their first, owned connectivity to the internet. But that's a place to start. This is about iteration, I think. And so, I think the big bet that's being made, or one of the bets we're making, I don't think it's actually that big of a bet. Say it's a medium-sized bet, is that ultimately the product, the value, the services that are going to be offered in this way are actually going to be better than what's available through native. And holding aside maybe a special case around, you have to be speedy because you have to be there native or something else, like around a game or something like that. But ultimately, big services, the web services are going to develop things that they can do on this that they can't do on others. And that's where most of the time is spent on the phone. We already have, and like I said, we have an installed base of 0. Facebook and Twitter. Facebook, as an example, has a more deeply integrated application on this OS that has 0 users right now. The only thing that was the new when the most recent iPhone OS came out, and that's going to iterate because they can do more things with it. So I think the big bet is longer term. This is actually going to be a better OS because you can do more things with it, not the cheapest OS. Does that make sense?
I also just wanted to bring the perspective. I mean, we live here in Silicon Valley where we have the latest, greatest devices, but I mean, look at China. China has 1.3 billion people, has 1 billion subscribers. There are 200 million subscribers on 3G for smartphones, and maybe this year there'll be 300 million. but that means there's 700 million other mobile users that are still on 2G. I mean, and we're just talking about China, not the rest of the world. I mean, there's still a lot of opportunity. I mean, we have to really, step back and think, not everybody's going to have 4G LTE in 2013. I mean, we really need to think about outside the advanced markets.
Are there plans to have a Firefox Edge-only phone or 2G phone?
So we are not really driving the actual phone hardware roadmap. So far, the phones that you're seeing being demoed here, they're driven by the interest of carriers, the interest of OEMs, kind of devices they want to go and bring in the market. So if there's an OEM that would like to bring a 2G phone in a specific part of the world, there's nothing that stops them from our side.
So there's a question right here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Andreas alluded to this earlier, where he was talking about how the iconic smartphones.
Can you get him a microphone?
Oh, yeah. So Andreas alluded to this a little bit earlier, where he was talking about how the iconic smartphones are the ones that have all the margin. A report came out recently that said Samsung produces something like 65% of the phones and makes 20% of the profit, and Apple does about 33% of the phones and does the other 80% of the profit. So if that's the case in the smartphone world, how does Mozilla make margin, make money?
Excellent question. I'm really glad you asked that. As you said in the talk earlier, we are non-profit. We don't really make money or margin. Yeah, so we have ways to monetize, and basically we are a non-profit, but of course we also have an engineering force, and we would like to have a salary when they go home in the evening. So we use various methods to monetize, and often if you once have a lot of users, and we have on a desktop hundreds of millions of users, it's pretty straightforward to monetize. And what sets us apart is that we don't optimize that. So we don't have quarterly statements to see if it doesn't bug the engineering teams, how can squeeze out more profit, because that's not what we optimize it for. So we need to be able to sustain ourselves, and we derive certain revenues from desktop, and in the future, a couple years down the road, if this project succeeds the way we think it's also very easy to monetize some of the mobile pieces of it. But that's not really the goal. It's simply a side effect of us being a non-profit, that we don't have to optimize for profit. And that also allows us to think very differently about these things. So we are not really, we don't have any specific services we are trying to push. If you look at Android is really Google's phone in your pocket. It has all the Google services connected to it, and they are in this game because they really want you to use their services. We don't really have an invested interest in any of the services we are offering. We might offer a marketplace that you can choose if you would like to use that, but if ZTE would like to offer a marketplace, we're very supportive of that. So we would like to create a platform where anyone can compete and anyone gets a fair chance to monetize something and sustain themselves, and we would like to play in that pool eventually as well, but right now that's not really a priority for us.
I have a question for the panel from regular users, all right? Because you target kind of not very high end. My question is, right now, the iPhone and the Android already dominate the market. People have experience using these phones. I have Android phone, but I love Firefox from OS point of view, like on my desktop and laptop. I use default to Firefox. However, for regular users, what is the incentive for them to use the Firefox? Because right now the iPhone, iOS, and also the Android are already so prevalent, and also I think they can do as much as people want them to do. So what kind of differentiation? Earlier mentioned that you guys try to do something that other OS cannot be done, so that you have more functionality. I want to hear that.
Yeah, so I think the first item we need to agree on is that if you look at the map that Ben was showing earlier, most people in those areas of the world do not have experience with iPhone. They might have seen one on TV, but that's kind of as close as they get to it. So many parts of the world today are very, very different from the mobile sector here. People have these little flip phones, and you can dial a number, and maybe with Opera Mini you can get to the web, sort of, kind of. But it's a very different world, and that's why we think that that's where a lot of volume is. Many of these people over time will get to the point where they would like to upgrade to a smartphone, and that's exactly the segment you're aiming at. And what we're trying to do is really create a really good basic smartphone experience where you have a rich app ecosystem behind it. And one of the areas where we think we can differentiate a lot is that if you go to a store in Brazil and pick up an Android phone, as I did a couple of months ago, you look at that app marketplace on that Android phone, you're going to find all the applications people in North America like to use. Because it's a curated marketplace. There's a company that decides what goes in, what goes out. And it doesn't really scale at the size of the world or the size of the web. And that's one of the properties of this phone is very different. It's not centralized. There's not just one way how you can get content on it that's approved either in Mountain View or in Cupertino by the owner of the platform. Instead, this is an open device where developers can push local content directly to this device. So one of the goals we have for the content as we're working with content providers in the different launch regions is to get a lot of locally relevant content. So if you're somewhere in the southern part of Brazil and you're playing soccer, then you have the local content that's relevant to you in that part of the world. And it doesn't really make sense for you to send, as a developer, that app somewhere to Apple or to Google for approval. It's like the web is simply distributed decentrally.
Let me play devil's advocate there. Because one could argue that there are benefits of centralization. And I think Android versus iOS is a pretty good example here. iOS is secure and generally safe. Android is a pretty well-known target for all kinds of malware. So one, what's going to be different Firefox OS on security? And then two, to what extent do the carriers then, are the carriers going to want to be their own agents of centralization, coordination, control?
Can I jump in on this? So I think because I want to answer both those questions, I think those are really important. I think that I think you have to pick one extreme or the other. And I think you need full curation with the idea that this is really not going to be for everybody. And you're going to be a taste maker for a certain set of people. And I think ultimately, as the smartphone technology spreads globally, and I know sometimes it's hard for us to think about that, because there are a lot of people who've never actually seen an iPhone in their hand. But I think that only really, if you're going to have that full curation, that curated experience, that's not for everybody. Because you can't pick and choose what is best for 6 billion people. You really can't. The problem maybe with Android, and I'm not going to make a statement, I'm just going to make a suggestion here, a modest suggestion, is that it's only halfway. The problem is it's partly curated. The web isn't curated. The web is completely open. And so it does work for everybody. And yes, there are some problems with the web, but the same problems that you're going to have with the web, to some extent, that you're going to have here, but mostly you get the benefits, and there's a very high ROI. I think the fantastic thing about what Mozilla's done is that if operators, or if anybody, if ZTE, if my Uncle Bob, who just got his first smartphone, wants to start their own app store, they're like, get after it. So it is completely open, and that's the whole reason why, ultimately, if you go to OEMs and why there's such a, one company dominates in terms of profit, there's one company who dominates that whole stack and can actually differentiate. And then the others are kind of nibbling around the edges, and some are doing some other strategic things. And so maybe there will be other OEMs who can share in that bucket of profit because they can actually control the whole experience, but it's still up to them to provide that full stack of experience that a user wants to buy or an operator wants to market. Does that make sense?
Just to add on as well, just another relevant point, I think. Competition is good. Having more platforms, more different operating systems out there for mobile phones, it's a good thing. Just because iOS and Android is dominating now doesn't mean it's going to dominate forever. And for innovation, sometimes you need that competition.
I want to comment on your question around security, because that indeed is actually very, very important. If you look at the web today on a desktop, you're right, it's an ugly place. It's just like scams around every corner, and that's the context that browsers were designed for. So when you go with your browser to a website, your browser is going to assume the worst of that website. It's going to assume that the site is out to get you and steal personal information, and it's going to build a very tight firewall around all of that. So the browser operates under the assumption that web is hostile, and until you grant a certain permission as a user, no information about your personal information is handed out, for example. So the browsers have today developed a very sophisticated security model that involves the user where it makes sense, and we are using the same system on this phone as well. So now the same dialogues and the same experience that you have from the desktop web also translates to the mobile web. So your geolocation, for example, you get a little door hanger where you can consent to that being disclosed or not, and if you ignore it, it's not disclosed. So in that sense, actually, we are quite a bit more sophisticated in a system like Android, because we we were designed from the ground up to deal with this hostile environment that's a little bit uncontrolled, like the web is. And systems like Android or iOS are really designed for a different environment. Their security is more of an afterthought. They designed kind of a friendly, happy app ecosystem, and then at some point security was put on top of that. Whereas we are from a world where like everything is really dangerous and must be very carefully monitored.
They put security on top of that? They put security on top of Android? I missed that. John, you have a question?
I had a question about the positioning of Firefox phones, which is you very clearly subdivided it into like 10 different segments from iconic to entry, and at least the prototype hardware I'd seen didn't seem that low in features. So my question is, to an operator, are they that much cheaper, even assuming no incremental cost going to Mozilla? Are you able to really provide a handset at a much lower price point for an entry user?
Yes.
Like orders of magnitude? I mean, to give a ballpark.
So I think this goes back to the comments we heard earlier, is that we're not trying to make a phone that's substantially cheaper than an Android phone. That's a losing business. I'm trying to kind of like squeeze on the price side of this. The goal is to make affordable phones for that segment. And yes, you get a certain price advantage. The system you have seen here runs on hardware where you can actually run really old versions of Android. Gingerbread, in case you remember, like 3 years ago or so, that version of Android runs on this device. So you can't sell this Android. It's going to be a really crappy Android experience because most of the apps don't run it anymore. It's extremely insecure since there's no updates for Gingerbread anymore. So you can sort of kind of like jury-rig an Android phone together, but it's not really a competitive experience. And what you're trying to do is basically use the same hardware. We're targeting from the beginning that segment, so we've optimized very much for the low-end hardware spectrum. And as an example, we're sitting on the chipset vendors that we are working with here, Qualcomm. We are using the most affordable chipset that they are selling right now in their chipset roadmap. So we're aiming at the bottom, but not really trying to compete on prices. Simply that's where the volume is. We're trying to make a good modern smartphone experience out of it, and get a little bit of an edge over Android, but that's not really the key differentiator there.
Of course, ZTE can make money, otherwise we wouldn't be in the business. And I think, operators want choices because, a lot of operators don't take the iPhone, obviously, because they can't make any money because of the subsidies, so the ROI isn't there. And then for Android, certainly the whole ecosystem is geared towards the Google ecosystem. I mean, we make plenty of Android handsets, but as I think Wayne and Andreas had alluded to, you're kept within the Android ecosystem. So Google Play, all that revenue goes to Google, and all the advertising goes to Google. So, if you have an operator providing their own app store or content, they can have a better balance of terms, and maybe the pricing on the hardware is subsidized through some of the services that they offer with a competitive hardware price.
Question right here.
So you mentioned that in that presentation, you mentioned that you are targeting the entry-level customer. One key problem with that customer is he's not loyal or she's not loyal ever. And they're very quick to jump products. The first question is that, what is your retention strategy in making sure that this customer, when he uses the Mozilla phone, his next phone will not be an Android or an iPhone? He uses these, and I have another question. On switching cost, both Android and iOS have an app store, which makes me invested in the app store. Because when I buy an app on Android, it's like I'm not only renting the house, I'm also buying the furniture which I can only use in that house. So how do you make sure that, because you're not forcing me to use your app store alone. I have like tens of app stores. So how are you making sure that that customer will be retained and the switching costs are there? Like what is preventing me from moving to the next, when I can actually get addicted to it? And I think that's
good. It's a good analogy, the furniture. So
yeah. This is going to be a very interesting conversation because all those things we are not trying to do. We're trying to build an open platform, and at its very core, the first thing we're trying to do is make sure you can very easily switch. So everything, all the apps here, for example, build in HTML5, and you can take those with you already today. So when you buy them from our app store on the Firefox OS phone, you can very easily already take them with you onto an Android phone. We offer a little runtime that basically you can run pretty much the same application, similar experience on Android phones. We would love to do the same thing on iOS, but Apple's rules for that particular silo don't allow us to do that. You can also take them this year on the desktop in some cases. So we have, I guess we have an anti-consumer retention strategy in that sense. Our goal is to push open technology, so we think that any kind of lock-in is bad. The debate, if you're going to retain that user, it's not by like locking in a jail cell and throwing away its key or like making you like buy your own furniture. Instead, they're going to try to make the best phone you've ever used. And version 1 is going to like get some way there, and it's going to probably take us a couple more iterations until we have the best smartphone in the world. But that's in the end the way to do it. That you make a smartphone the user next time around wants to buy again, and if you make it good enough, they will do that. But that's really the superior way of going about it, because that kind of competition is going to keep us honest. Today it's a desktop browser world. You're not using Firefox because you have no other way of using the browser once you start using Firefox. You can very easily switch to Chrome, you can very easily switch to Safari, and people stick with us because we make the best browser. So that's how they're trying to instill competition, where we're trying to force everyone to move to a common standard, so you can take this stuff with you, you can go to other stores, you can switch phones easily. That's the only way to really encourage competition.
Question.
I got a couple of questions. First, like, just got a couple of very practical ones. If I want to start developing for your platform, like, how do you get started? Like, how much do I have to pay you? What's the fee? And then, like, when you showed the browser and you showed the apps on iOS, you know, we have Safari and then the apps turn on the web view. So how different is the browser versus the apps that are running? And also, I'm kind of a little bit upset that you're not launching in US. And what's the reason? Because it seems like you're launching in countries where English is not the first language, and I can't do internationalization right now. So, like, if I'm making, and the other bigger reason is for me not to make an app right now, because those, you know, third world countries, people don't want to pay. They want free apps. So there's no incentive for me to make an app for them. So, like, when is it coming to US?
Okay, so there's a lot of awesome questions, and we didn't plan these questions, by the way, because they're really awesome. I have a really good answer for them too. So first of all, where do we start? Let me think. SDK, yes. So there is no SDK. And you don't have to pay us anything either, so I hate to disappoint them both there. It's the web, it's HTML5. So if you know how to make an HTML5 web app, you know how to develop for a platform. And that's actually really key of our strategy. So there's no Mozilla proprietary technology in there that you need an SDK for. We don't think that scales. That's the reason web has died on us, because HP made this like HP-specific proprietary framework that you need in addition to the web to make applications. So our goal is we had to add new technology to the platform because the web a year ago didn't support some of the things you need. You couldn't make a phone call, you couldn't send SMS, you couldn't use Bluetooth, NFC. So we proposed a bunch of new standards, often working with others, like Google and Apple, who make the other part of the browser pie. And working with them, we proposed a lot of new standards, but that's all you need. W3C standards, HTML5, JavaScript, you're good to go make an app, and definitely don't have to pay us anything.
What, to get the access to the low-level stuff, or like device stuff, there has to be like a library that you build that has an API by which...
So he doesn't like to ask me about questions about access to low-level.
Yeah, so access to low-level libraries, how do you do that? How do you get the SDK for that? There's no SDK for that either. So, for example, like the very low-level telephony stack, where you can talk to like the guts of the Meridian modem. We have proposed an API for that. We're trying to standardize right now that API in the W3C system group. And the goal really is to make sure this phone has no proprietary technology in there, because that simply doesn't scale. People are not going to make Firefox OS apps. They're going to make mobile HTML5 apps. So it's very important, all the technology in there is accessible. Now, there's one little twist I might want to mention is, some of these APIs there's no good way to ask the user for consent. So if I ask you on your phone, do you want to install this a new dialer, it's going to talk to your radio. Most people don't understand what it means. I don't understand exactly what it means from a security perspective. So there's a review process we have to put on top of the established way how web API security works for the most highly privileged APIs, such as the radio modem. So they're actually only approved stores on the device can grant access to those specific APIs. There's not a financial model behind it, just a review. So if you want to be submitted to Mozilla Store, for example, because you're using one of these APIs, then we will review your code, and if it's not malicious, we will enable it on our platform.
Who actually is doing the review? Is that inside Mozilla or is that part of the W3C?
We will offer the review as part of the Mozilla store, because it's our store. We invite others to make stores. So as John was saying, for example, for some handset makers, it might be pretty interesting to do their own store. So maybe at some point ZTE decides that it's a good business to have a store. And that's also a very important competition point, because right now, if you make an Android app, you have to pay Google's highway tax, like 30 or 40% or whatever it is. And we think that's also an area where there should be competition. So we want to enable you, for example, to either go to multiple stores or just sell directly to the consumer and just bypass the store. And the store simply becomes a vehicle of choice for you that offers you distribution and facilitates payment. But you can use it at your choice and kind of pick which one you want to use. All right, you had a couple more questions.
Yeah, the difference between the Firefox browser and let's say if I download the Firefox on my Android right now, is that the same version? Because if I want to test it, obviously you said there's an SDK. What is a simulator then? How do we test it? And,
So the question is about developer tools, emulators, and how do I run it today? And what's the difference between the desktop browser and the phone browser?
So this is also very much part of our core strategy, is that for us it's only one web. So we have the same web rendering engine across all the different things we make, the desktop, mobile, Android, Firefox OS. And it's always the same rendering engine. So between the browser and the web runtime, in quotes, it's exactly the same rendering engine. It's actually the same rendering engine as Android as well. So most of the apps we have seen in the marketplace, you can use just as fine on Android as well. So if you install Firefox on Android, it actually brings the web runtime, offers the same environment, and you can access the marketplace. And you can test with that. You also have a simulator that runs the system in an emulator, and you can test on that as well. So you have a bunch of different ways you can already use it today quite well.
He also asked about localization.
Localization, yes. So the question was around how do you localize, because most of the world doesn't speak English. That's a hard question I don't have a terribly good answer for, but I would encourage you to really think about that, because you're right that the parts of the world we're talking about right now are developing countries. They might not have the financial strength of some of like the US market, for example, but there's a lot of people there. And you're also right, I think, we have also seen this in data that people don't like to pay up front, especially in developing countries. However, if you look at the US, I think we see the same trends. That people don't want to pay $5 for a game up front. They want you to download the game, and then if they really like it, they might buy some widget in the game, or they might buy an extra level. And that kind of stuff actually works really well in developing countries as well. So for that, monetization in the platform is very important. And there actually helps us a lot that we work very closely with carrier partners. So in every launch country we were launching, the device is integrated with carrier billing. And you have a very simple web API where you can execute carrier billing, and you can sell people a new level or some new widget in their own game. And that goes directly to the carrier account people have, whether it's prepaid or postpaid. And that actually is a big step up in many countries for what you have today, because today you have on Google, for example, or on iOS. In Brazil, the platform owners would like you to use a credit card and bill directly through them instead of the carriers, but most people in Brazil, for example, do not have an international credit card. So this kind of like app sales and monetization really doesn't work well in much of South America. And that's one of the things that we are changing by partnering very closely with operators.
Question over here.
All right, I promise I only have one question, okay? But I do want to ask and make a request that, understanding that every one of these devices that we end up carrying, whether it's a phone or a tablet, is a transceiver. It's not only receiving signals, it's also sending signals. And we all know that living right next to a cell phone tower is not the best thing in the world for us. Well, that's what we're creating every time we hold one of these devices very close to ourselves. My request is for my 5-year-old daughter. And so she is growing up in a huge environment of wireless signals from day one. And some tablets, Google Nexus and Microsoft Surface, for example, allow you the option through micro USB to actually connect via the Ethernet, so you could turn your wireless off if you wished. We all love choice. That's a choice that I would love to request for the future generation that you build into all of your devices.
First of all, I really like that idea. We are not supporting that right now for the version 1 of the phone. However, this is where the system is different. So in case of systems like Android or iOS, there's a single company that controls what kind of features you have in the future. That's different for us. We have an open source community consisting of Mozilla, but also many of our partners, of ZTE engineers, Telefonica engineers, and if you want, you. So if you have a certain idea and you think that this product should go in a certain direction, a super certain feature, you can volunteer your engineering time, and you can help us grow the project and add that capability. And often this is not really only just individual contributors, but also companies. So this is how ZTE, for example, who's present here today, and Alcatel, TCL, one of the other OEMs we work with, can collaborate. Mozilla is a space where they can come to, and they have a shared interest. They both would like to make sure dialogue works, and we get a chance to share the engineering work between these different pieces. So Mozilla is really this kind of collaborative ground where companies can come and share the engineering load, and if there's interesting features of that, we can collaborate on building them.
Question right here.
Yes, I heard you guys touch on this, and therefore you acknowledge the importance of it, but I actually didn't hear a solution or a clear path for it. So I write games, and when I write a game, I write it in C, and I use OpenGL, and the same code that I write, I can take it to iOS, and it's really simple for me to run it there. I can take it to Android, there's a really clear, easy solution for me to run it using J and I can grab the code and run it on the desktop, same code, minor change. I can grab the same code, and if I want to put it on Steam, I can do that. Now that the PS4 is coming out, there's going to be a clear solution for me to do that too. But so all these platforms allow me to easily run native OpenGL-based code. But I didn't hear that I was going to be able to easily do the exact same thing with your OS, one, and two, preemptively, WebGL is not really a solution in that case because it would require a full rewrite of the entire application into JavaScript. Right? So what's the answer for that? Is there a clear path for native code or gaming?
Yes, and again, I swear we didn't plan any of the questions. Yes, there is, and you can take your C++, C, and OpenGL code as it is, unchanged, and run it on the web. So there's actually a member of my research team who has written a compiler that takes C and C++ code and translates it to JavaScript. And already today, you can take that very easily and port games over to the web, and a couple of people have already done that. So if you want to Google for Emscripten, you will find that tool, and there's a 3D game called Sauerbraten, some open source 3D game that's C++, C, and OpenGL, and automatically translated without any changes. It runs in a web browser these days. Someone supported Qt, I think. I saw a couple like Qt editors and stuff like that the other day in the office. So the web is today a platform that's really very general, and you can run a lot of different interesting tools against that. And one of these tools allows you to take your existing game content today and pretty easily translate that.
Question here?
Yes. Hi, my name is Joe Jason, and I chair a mobile developer group here in Silicon Valley, and it's called SV Forum. I have a comment and then a question. So my comment is, we haven't learned that much new tonight. We've learned that Mozilla has a new OS. Yep, we learned that at Mobile World Congress, and that it feels like it's true open source. And I'm a proponent of open and open source, and the moderator knows that from knowing me for years. We've learned that one operator says that open wins. Now that's unusual for an operator to say that. Okay, I've worked for 2 mobile operators. We've learned that AT&T has an open API situation. They've done that in the past with M-Mode. So that's not necessarily new, but we all have positive intent. My question is, as we push ID, push it to the consumer, identification and privacy and security, right now it seems to be that the service providers are dependent on that. So we're dependent on our ID with Google Gmail, so then we're dependent on them for security. We're dependent on a telephone number, that's security for the mobile operator. When are we going to push the security and the ID to the consumer where they can manage their own identity? So people know that I don't have Gmail and Yahoo, I have my own joemail.com. So I do that because I can pay for it and then I have my own security. So if we talk about truly open architecture here, why don't we push it to the consumer, give the consumer the option to have their own identity, manage their own identity, and one way to do that, my question is here, SIM card, okay? SIM card is an open standard. So there's 2G and 3G SIM platform, now there's virtual SIM, and then we have 4G, which will be all IP communications. So what does the panel think about SIM cards? Physical, virtual, and then true open 4G IP communications.
So Actually, the AT&T demo showed exactly what you're asking for. It got a little bit lost that there's other options of doing that. So, what you saw there was Persona. It's a new identity standard we are proposing, former name of browser ID. And the idea of Persona, there's one common standard how a website can query your identity. And as a user, you have the choice of what identity you want to supply. And the way AT&T was demoing that, because it was an AT&T demo, they were demoing you the AT&T implementation of Persona, which of course uses their phone number and their services. Mozilla has separately of that a Mozilla implementation of Persona that is entirely separate from AT&T, a Mozilla-based account where you can use email, a verified email account as your identity. So already today you can go to our Persona implementation, you can say, okay, you use your Joe email address, that's one of your personas, and maybe if you work for some company, then you can use that company email as your second identity, and then you can choose when you want to log in which of the identities you would like to have. So this is also very much a typical approach for us, that you want to build a system that's open, where others can build their services on top of. In this case, AT&T demoed that as a third identity in that choice box, you could have your SIM card-based phone identity. So the goal is to build a system where you choose what identity you would like to use, and our interest is to standardize the API that allows you to do that.
Exactly, and I think, this point that that's one of the areas that I'm focusing right now, and I would really like to hear from you guys. How do you want us to expose that? Because I can give you identity on each HTTP request you're making, but I need to take care of your privacy, and I need to take care of other issues. But as long as we are, work that out, I think there's a big opportunity. I totally agree with you. There are some functionalities that we have in a core network that we can, on demand, can pull your identity out of your SIM card. If it's like, you're transferring $100 over Bank of America would like to have an API call to do that. But I would like to work with developers to kind of, see how we should expose that. I'd love to hear, from you.
I mean, personally, I can only speak to, my experience and observations in the US, but I mean, in the US, the concept of the SIM card, we've been living in a mixed CDMA, GSM world for quite a while, so I think most Americans don't even know what a SIM card is, and switching from one phone to another via SIM card, maybe once LTE is standardized across all the devices and everybody's on 4G, but I know your perspective, you like to control your identity, you want to be anonymous on the web and stuff. There are people who do like to use Gmail, Google, as well as Facebook and Facebook Connect and other ideas around authentication just for ease of, convenience, so that's just my perspective.
Yeah, I do want to follow up the privacy and security issue. My question is, Apple price itself, because all the apps on Apple iPhone, they already qualify, and they have a certain criteria they have to follow, and then you have to pass, the app has to pass their criteria so that you can put on the store. My question to you guys is, on one hand, you promote openness. So no one is going to dominate, or no one is going to enforce their stamp. So my question then, is there a Wild West? And then if I do it on the desktop, I like to use Firefox. The reason is because if I download a program, I have the option install or not install, and I can check it out. And also less virus attacking Firefox. That's the reason. On the other hand, for the mobile, general people don't have a lot of security sense of security, and it's very hard to verify the privacy and security of this app. My question is, how can you mitigate that? And also, in the future, we're going to have it's already now, like mobile payment. So how can you make sure that it's secure? Thank you.
So I very much like the Wild West analogy, and I think that's very accurate for the web. But that's exactly the environment browsers were designed to operate in. So browsers are designed explicitly with the goal to shield you from that kind of environment. And on this phone, basically the same thing happens as on your desktop. Is that there's a browser engine running that has a fairly sophisticated security model behind it that makes sure that the web content cannot damage your phone or your browser in that case. And in some cases, we consult with the user where it makes sense to kind of glean your intent, whether you want to do something that's privacy sensitive. For example, if a page triggers an API to have a picture taken with a viewfinder, we can't just like take a picture and head to the website. That might be a privacy risk. So instead what we do is we pop open the viewfinder. And if you then go and actually go ahead and take a picture, we can infer your intent. We just, in response to a website opening the viewfinder on you, we went ahead and took a picture. It's pretty safe to assume that you are okay with that picture being shared with the website. So this is very similar to the way browsers today in many areas already try to glean your intent or try to ask you permissions. And this is sufficient for 99% of the content out there. So like a newspaper app or a game, they will have to access to the screen and to the touch interface and to audio. Those things are not really highly security sensitive. So those general permissions, either we simply allow or we ask the user for permission. There's a small set of like highly critical things. If you've got like to access like NFC on the device or payment, these kind of things, then there's a review step, and there we use the Mozilla Marketplace or other partner marketplaces. And whoever stands behind the marketplace is responsible to make sure that the apps are reviewed. So in case of Mozilla, for example, all brand stands for privacy and security, as you certainly know as a user. And we are very keen on keeping it that way. So we will do a thorough review of these apps so that we can maintain our brand values that are behind that store. But the key difference really is that this is going to be for a very small set of applications where it's necessary, not all of them. Right now, if Wikipedia would like to make an app, they have to submit it to Cupertino for approval. That doesn't really make sense. So you cannot take the 99% of the web that is not security critical and force it through like a funnel where there's some people sitting in North America reviewing your content. It simply doesn't make sense. So we're trying to kind of break it apart into the security critical part that needs to be reviewed, and it's the general web part that should not be governed like that.
All right, so we're a little short on time. I have one question from the audience, and then I'm going to wrap up. So let me just follow up on what sort of we've been talking about. It's been Wayne special protection for you. Okay, can I install WhatsApp or any other messaging device on my Telefonica Firefox device?
Can you?
Will I be able to?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, so you're not going to impose any restrictions on types of apps or anything?
I think there's no restrictions on types of apps, no.
Okay. So, and you presumably have an app store of your own, but you'll be open to...
We've actually, for those of you who don't know, we've actually built a sort of a similar service called Two, and so we're very supportive of that. Absolutely.
Do you think other carriers are going to be following suit?
Well, you know, we're leaders, so.
Okay.
All right, so actually I want to tell you a little anecdote. I met with the CEO of a major telco, it was not Telefonica, but fairly recently, and we usually, when we do these kind of meetings, we ask them, the first thing we ask them is, so what are you here for today? And we have also written our own statement for that, so Mozilla's statement, and we asked them, what are you here for? And that CEO opened this and like, we have to create an open platform where users have choice, and it's really important for us. There's no locking, none of the carrier, none of the OEM for anyone. We want something really open and nobody can control. And he totally killed our punchline, because that's our punchline. So I think carriers have understood over the last 10 years where they, basically carriers are facing a near-death experience here, and I'm very sorry to have like, this direct about our partners here, but they are really good at competing with each other. They have no idea how to compete with Google. Google is building these devices where everything about the device is Google. And if you ask people in this room here, we just asked this question earlier, you were asking me, you asked them who has an iPhone. You didn't ask them who has an AT&T phone. So all these companies are losing the customer relationship, and they are having a relationship with Google or with Apple, and they're losing the customer relationship with the carrier. And as a result, the carriers really don't know how to compete with that. And this is very different from 10 years ago. With flip phones, the carrier used to own the experience and deliver it to you. Now it's just like these other companies. And I think carriers have understood that they can never return to the old world. They can no longer make logged in phones. The second closest thing to that is make a completely open platform where at least they can compete on it. I think that's what they're looking for.
Next time we do this panel, we're going to make it a drinking game. Anytime anybody uses the word open, everybody has to try it. Question right here, it's the last question, and then I'm going to wrap up.
Yeah, sorry. This is more of a developer's question. So Mozilla seems to have partnered with OEMs and carriers. I'm more interested in the partnerships with other browser vendors. So let's say I'm more interested in finding out if an app built for Firefox OS would work on Safari or Chrome or other browsers, and we've seen that pushing standards forward is a slow process. So yeah, how does Mozilla cope with that? And
so there's a theory behind it, and there's a practice behind it. The theory behind it is that if you write an app for any browser, it should work on all browsers. And that theory actually works pretty well if you use well-established standards. So you kind of stay in a comfortable core of HTML5. It tends to work pretty reasonably well across all the platforms. If you do the more like crazy stuff around the edges, that's where you get in trouble. That's where like Firefox and Chrome and Safari behave differently. That's simply part of the standardization process. So it's important to note that for browser companies like us, it's extremely important to standardize something. If Mozilla builds an API and it doesn't get standardized in the end, it's a pure loss for us because we have to maintain it, but nobody's going to use it. At scale, people only use standard APIs. So we have a pretty good relationship with our other browser vendor friends, as I like to call them, because we all have the same problem. Google has the same problem. Google cannot get an API into the web that not everyone else is supporting. So we tend to partner a lot, we tend to coordinate a lot. There's forums like W3C where we push these standards. And it's specifically for the apps they're developing here. On Android, you can take them to the regular browser in there. There might be small differences between our browser and the Android browser. So actually there's also a Firefox app runtime you can take with you on Android phones, since they're allowed to do that. On iOS, the story is a little bit more tricky because they're not allowed to ship our own runtime there. So there you're kind of like stuck with whatever browser Apple ships with. And for the kind of the comfortable core of HTML5, it works pretty well. If you're pushing things like WebGL, it gets more tricky. Like Safari right now does not support WebGL, I think. So the web, in that sense, is a little bit trickier. But also, I don't think it's much more tricky than Android, for example. In Android, you have like 20 different versions of it across all these different OEMs that mess with all the different APIs. So fragmentation there actually is much, much worse. The web at least has a way over time to resolve fragmentation. So we're all moving towards standards. We're all trying to move towards a world where there's fewer differences, not more, whereas Android is just kind of exploding in every direction.
Okay, before we go, give me a second, I want to do a speed round. Everybody you have one question, I want you all to answer it in 20 seconds each. All right, let's take turns. So here's my question. 3 years from now, there are 3 operating systems, iOS, Android, Firefox. Let's say there's room, big world out there, let's say there's room for a 4th. After those 3, what's the 4th? What's the 4th operating system?
I think the way I see it, it's the HTML5, and it's beyond the mobile devices. It's about machine to machine. It's about a lot of networking, and so devices is the next way.
So not Windows, not BlackBerry, not Sailfish, not.
I think I'll look at more.
Your answer is not the above. Okay, wait.
HTML5.
I think that's a really great answer. No, honestly, because I actually think what ends up happening with things like Open Web Device and things of that nature is the solitary, the silos that happen actually with OSs. I actually think ultimately that has to evolve away. It dissolves away even more than evolves.
So there's only one operating system. All the others fade away, which is HTML5.
It's the web, baby.
Right.
So actually, I think one of our goals is to have multiple implementations of HTML5 smartphone operating system. So I don't know who's going to be the 4th. If there's a 4th, I hope there will be a 4th. And it's going to be based on HTML5, that I'm pretty certain of. And I don't know who, but I don't really care. If Microsoft wants to make an HTML5-based smartphone, I think it would be awesome. A couple other players, I think, have also the potential to do that. So it's pretty clear, I think, where the technology train is headed. And hopefully there'll be multiple implementations, because we shouldn't be the only one either.
I'm going to go with Microsoft, with Windows Phone. The only reason I'm saying that is, they're taking their operating system a certain way. You can make HTML, JavaScript, CSS apps for Windows 8 now. I'm sure they're going to keep pushing that now. And BlackBerry, they got web workers. You can write apps using web tech for those guys too. I'm not saying they're gonna. I don't know what the future holds, but I think Microsoft's got a good chance.
We won't hold you to this, except that's being recorded on the internet.
So this is my own personal opinion, and I also agree with Microsoft in terms of Windows Phone. I mean, Windows Phone 8 is a pretty good experience. Microsoft's got deep pockets. It's got other revenue streams besides BlackBerry, so they can do an Xbox strategy, lose billions for 5, 6, 7 years, and then recoup it in the end. So they've bought Skype. I think Skype's a global brand. Integrate that into mobile for Wi-Fi calls and video conferencing. I think, and they're really trying to integrate their user experience from tablets to desktop to Windows phones with their tiles. So just based on resources and attrition, I think they could potentially be a fourth player.
Thank you very much. I think that's it. We're good? Done? Thank you, everybody.
Well, thanks for Jay. The panel was awesome. I think the audience, give yourselves applause. Those are awesome questions. And also special thanks to Telefonica and Adobe for tonight's event. Anyway, I got extra drink tickets, so if you guys want some more drinks, I got drink tickets here. Have a good night, guys. See you next month.
I think the audience had some really good singers. Yeah, I'm sorry, I want to ask you. Yeah, that's okay. That's good. And I think that there was a